But welcome everyone. This is the University of Utah Alumni Association and the Center for Career and Professional Development at the University of Utah. We are co-sponsoring this event today. I'd like to welcome you to, we have a series of panelists here who are all career coaches and work in the career coaching industry. And this is our first ever virtual career coaches panel. So bear with us if we have any rough spots like we just did, but I really appreciate you being here with us today. Before I get started, I want to remind you, our audience, of two networking and career events that are coming up. First is on Tuesday, May 12th. And please don't forget to attend that. It's the annual statewide alumni career fair. It's from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. For the first time, this is going to be a virtual career fair, so you need to register for that ahead of time. And there's a link in the bottom of the description of this YouTube video. And if you look down at the bottom of the description, you'll see alumni.utah.edu. You can click on that link after the video, and you can sign up for that virtual career fair. There also, on the 13th of May, will be a networking and career webinar. And so that's a week from today from 4 to 5 p.m. So same time frame on Wednesday, May 13th. We'll have a keynote talk from Jeff Lee. He's the president of Infinite Scale. His talk is titled Networking 2.0, a strategy for COVID-19 and beyond. We will have 3 brief presentations after his keynote, and those will be on networking online, on a personal strengths assessment, and then career resources that are available to recent graduates of the U. You can also register for that event at alumni.utah.edu. I think you'll find all the information on both the 12th and the 13th events very valuable. And now for our panelists. First, we have Sarah Boman of the Boman Group. And Sarah is an executive coach and management consultant who works one-on-one with clients as they pursue their goals for advancement, improving communication skills, transitioning to a new profession, increasing earning potential, or finding greater job satisfaction. She specializes in storytelling, somatic feedback, neuro-linguistic programming, and executive presence. Sarah has a wide range of experience in public administration, management, government, financial services. Welcome, Sarah.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here.
And next, we have Melissa Ceballos. And Melissa, she has been coaching for nearly 20 years in different roles involving HR and talent acquisition, sales, marketing, business development. She has a true passion to help people. And everything she does, her focus is always on developing strong, meaningful, and long-lasting relationships, and to understand people's needs and align resources effectively for them. Melissa was born and raised in Southern California. She moved to Utah to attend school, and she's a graduate of the University of Utah with a bachelor's degree in communication. Melissa has spent her career working for Global Transportation Corporation in areas of HR, talent acquisition, and management. She made a move to financial services and does a lot of work with retirement information. She did that back in 2016, and it's really good to have you on the panel, Melissa.
Thank you, Andy. Good to be here, everyone. Thank you so much.
And now I want to introduce Pat Vaughn. So Pat brings nearly 30 years of professional recruiting and talent management experience into her coaching. She's worked for premier organizations like Disney and Cisco Systems, and she focuses on real world problems and then moves quickly to resolve issues that prevent people from achieving their goals. Now, whether you're in a C-suite or a new college grad, Pat customizes her assistance for your unique situation. She's the creator of a couple of programs. One's called Tiger Tactics, and the other one is Tight Markets, Tough Tactics. And both of those programs she has taught through continuing ed at the U. Now, Pat provides unique insight to the over age 50 concerns, and then she's worked a lot with artist transition and international clients. Thanks for joining us, Pat.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And finally, I want to introduce Stan Inman. Now, Stan, he's had 20 plus years with Students Affairs leadership, and Stan serves right now as the director of the Career and Professional Development Center for the University of Utah. And so he is helping sponsor this program today. And he has the overall responsibility for managing a centralized career center, which provides career programs and services to both undergraduate and graduate programs in 10 different university colleges. The U's Career and Professional Development Center helps thousands of units of students a year, along with providing access to handshakes, job board, and one-on-one career coaching to U alumni who've graduated from the U within the past year. I'd like to welcome Stan Inman. I think we heard you, Stan. Okay.
It's great to be with you all today.
There we go. Okay. Now I'm going to start out. So leave your mic unmuted there, Stan. And I have a question for you, and then I'll have one for a follow-up with Pat Vaughn. And we have a pretty wide range of registrants today for this webinar. And I really want to talk to both kind of different segments of that group. Now, one, we have a lot of new grads. A lot of folks signed up from the class of 2020 at the U and 2019. And from your point of view, Stan, working with students, what are the best actions that new grads can do right now to find a job if their career plans have been derailed by the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. That's a great question. First, let me give you a shout out in the Alumni Association, our great partners, for trying to pulling this all together and helping us really reach students. As you mentioned, we have a lot of new grads and graduates from last year that the Career and Professional Development Center continues to serve. So first of all, I want to let you know that resources are still available to you up to 1 year after graduation, and we'd love to make a connection with you. I think that's a two-part question. So the first part, I guess I would say, is, you know, in our mission, we have professional coaching, and we have about 10 professional coaches in the Career and Professional Development Center. So the first thing I would say is utilize that resource. Consult with a career coach. They will help you create a strategic job plan. That may sound like you may think I can do that on my own. I'm savvy enough to do that, but it's amazing what the guidance a career coach can offer you and help be a sounding board for you. So that's probably the first thing I'd recommend, is use the resources of the Career Center. I think networking as much as you possibly can is still the most successful strategy for job seekers. Now that may mean in this time it's a little differently. You know, you're using your LinkedIn job boards, you're joining LinkedIn groups, using the Alumni Association, their chapters, taking maybe even some online kinds of communities through Facebook. So find a community, continue to network, and I know we'll talk more about networking as a strategy. And then I would just say right now, there are lots of online job fairs going on. Some of you may receive some prompts about online job fairs. As Andy mentioned, we have one coming up on May 12th, but there is abundance of job fairs. I would encourage you to get into those job fairs, set up a profile, start interacting with those employers, get comfortable with that setting, and continue to kind of network through those job fairs. So the job market is certainly, you know, it's been a tough time for many students and new grads, particularly those grads who were planning on, you know, just 3 months ago entering one of the best job markets that I think we ever had. So it's been like, you know, dropping off a cliff, but don't panic, because there are great jobs out there still. In fact, one of the encouraging stats I pulled for you today is we had over 1,700 jobs and internships posted in our Handshake job board just in the month of April alone. So there are plenty of employers hiring. Some of those employers are going to be more on the technical side, certainly, but definitely you want to prepare yourself for the hiring process. Employers, the college market's a little different, just quickly to say, because employers have always felt like that is the the primary source for their talent acquisition. So that recruitment and university relations model that employers have is really pretty stable. So in fact, they tell us that about in a recent poll of our employers, about 60% of them say, hey, I have the same hiring outlook that I had in 2019. I expect to hire, and so they're going to come back into the hiring and recruitment season that starts generally in early fall. So yeah, I would just say the job market is there. We want to get you in a position where you're ready to engage with employers and be broad in your perspective, look at a lot of different kinds of opportunities, even opportunities that you may not feel like you absolutely qualify for. If it's a little bit of a reach, I think one thing I always tell job seekers is no job description is going to fit you perfectly. And so, you've got a lot to offer. Don't short side yourself. Think about what you can offer. Go into those application processes and in your resume and really try to highlight those things which you do offer an employer.
Great. Well, thanks, Stan. I have a follow-up question. Actually, I was wondering about, you mentioned all the 10 coaches you have for recent grads. Who qualifies as a recent grad?
Yeah, Andy, really, we're working with students who graduate. If you graduated 1 year or more, so we're working for 2019 graduates all the way through this year's graduating cohort of 2020. So yeah, and you can find us on our website. The coaches are there. You can make an appointment actually right through our virtual career studio today. That's one of the adjustments we had to make, is our career coaching appointments are virtual. But you can do that through our website, and it's an easy remember. So it's careers.utah.edu. That's where you'll find the coaches' profiles. You can look at that, decide who might be a best fit for you. You'll find our job postings, our links to the virtual career fairs, all of our resources online, even the practice interviewing platform that I think is going to be really beneficial for students to jump into.
Great. Well, thanks, Dan. Now, I want to kind of follow up too with Pat Vaughn, and we've been talking about students, but we have a lot of seasoned alums out there who maybe, they've had a long career history and maybe they've just lost their jobs in this pandemic, or maybe they're just worried about it. Is there something right now that people should be doing if they feel vulnerable? And what can you give us a few tips on what you should be doing right now if you're kind of worried about the future?
I'd be glad to. First of all, I think, as we all have heard, when you're given lemons, make lemonade. And so this is actually a great time to be able to start to build your foundation of what you might want to be doing if in case you are laid off. First thing is to absolutely take stock of where your finances are. If indeed your finances are in dire shape, then you need to perhaps take an interim position that may not even be career oriented. There are lots of people who are hiring now. But if you're going to stay on a career track, this is a great time to really look at your resume, make the tweaks that are necessary, make sure that you have the most current skills that are being sought after, very visible. And as Stan mentioned, network. Those people who are working remotely now, you don't have a boss hanging over your shoulder. You can do a little internet surfing and start to make some contacts with people that you haven't talked to for a long time. Stay current in the workplace and make yourself known to people who absolutely might have the ability to help you move along. But you have to take stock of where you are, and that's an individual decision.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Pat. And also, I just want to remind everybody who's watching on YouTube, if you have any questions for any of our panelists, please be sure to put those in the chat, and we will get to those questions when we can. We'll really appreciate it. Now, I have a question actually for Melissa. Melissa, tell me, if someone loses their job right now, and let's just say maybe the job wasn't a good fit to begin with, do you think in this job market, should they rush back in and get the first job that they can get, or do they take time to find the right fit?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Andy. And I appreciate that question. And I'm a true believer that things just happen for a reason. I believe that does happen from time to time. And I have to kind of go back to what Pat said, because I think it's very individualistic and you have to be conscientious of your personal state. And I think bringing that financial question into mind is really going to navigate if you move quickly or you take your time. I think, if at all possible, this could be a really great time to soul search and identify what you're passionate about. And, I can speak to this. I separated from a company 4 years ago, and after 19 years with one company, and it really allowed me to really stop and catch my breath. It was the first job I had out of college. It was the only job I ever had, and so I didn't know any different. I never really asked myself, what is it that I feel are my unique abilities, or what is it that I am passionate about? What gets me up every day? What am I, motivated and energized by? And if you can really take this time and self-assess and really write down and kind of think, prioritize what's important to me. What would an ideal job description look like? Or what would an ideal work environment look like? Who are types of people I'd like to work with? Do you want to be in a professional setting? Do you want to be in a casual setting? There's so many questions to ask yourself during this period when you're making a career transition. I think these are all things you can keep in mind. A good book that I read recently was called Unique Ability 2.0 Discovery by Dan Sullivan. And this was a really eye-opening book that can allow you to kind of go through that self-assessment process and really go through some exercises to identify where should I start, and what is going to be a perfect match for me at this stage in my life.
Yeah, Melissa, I really like that. I think I've heard that from multiple sources that, this is a really good time to do that self-assessment, that, everybody is kind of doing a little soul searching and figuring out what's important in their lives. And
great things can come out of it. So.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me think about another question, and I wanted to direct this to Sarah, but, if you do some assessment of yourself and your skill sets and what your strengths are, what do you think of the companies who are hiring? What are they looking for in a candidate that maybe they weren't looking for a few months ago? That's something now, just the way the world has changed. What kind of strengths and assets and skill sets are companies looking for now, do you think, that maybe they weren't in January?
So I would think, from my perspective, I think the biggest single factor that's changed now versus in January is the formatting is different, and the formatting keeps changing for these hiring managers. So they need you to be flexible and they need you to be patient, particularly as they navigate their own changing requirements and an interview process that might look really different from what they're used to. So if you can handle that whole experience professionally and patiently, I think that helps set you apart. I would also say, I think companies, particularly for mid-career hires, I think they're becoming either quite rigid in their requirements or a lot more flexible in their requirements, just because it is a bit more of a buyer's market. So I would say pay particular attention to the required traits that they're looking for and the preferred traits that they're looking for. If you don't have a preferred trait, that's okay. But if you're lacking some of the required traits, I would say they're probably going to be a little bit more firm on those required skills and credentials than they would have been before.
Okay. Well, yeah, I like your comments about flexibility, because that's certainly been something I think we've all had to get used to. Things for a while there, it seemed like the job market and what was going on in the world was changing every day. It still is, but it certainly required a lot of flexibility from a lot of different people. But I think that is a key component. And now, which makes me think about, in terms of management structure and what people are doing, looking forward, are there some leadership tips that this is actually a question for Pat Vaughn. You think there's some leadership tips that you could give to executives and managers right now that would help them lead their teams? So both, trying to figure out what's happening and making sure that their employees and their staffs are feeling confident, but also maybe advice to leaders on what they should do about hiring in the future. Now, obviously it changes a lot, but is there any overall advice you would give to a manager right now?
Well, my heart really goes out to people who are in leadership positions right now. I know that they're having many, many sleepless nights, to say the least. But I think the number one trait of a true leader is the ability to understand the situation and communicate it openly, honestly, and with transparency. I have seen many companies and organizations go through some very, very challenging times outside of the economic struggle that's going on right now. And they were able to retain their people and actually build a stronger bond by simply making sure that they communicated, sometimes on a daily basis, and let everyone know what was happening and how they would be impacted. Everyone is facing some very, very important decisions in their life, and you have to have that open line of communication that builds the trust that is absolutely necessary going forward. From a hiring perspective, I think employers, again, are more than trying to just put warm bodies in cold slots. They seem to be really wanting to take their time. And I think, and I agree with Sarah, I think one of the number one traits that they are looking for is people to be agile, flexible, and able to kind of move in a very fluid situation right now, which is what everybody is facing.
Okay, well, that's good to know. And I'm sure, what happens at this time, you get lots of resumes in, right? You get a lot of people applying for a job that maybe you weren't expecting that many applications for. And so I think we all kind of look at that and say, okay, what if I'm applying for a position, what is it that's going to make me stand out? I mean, if in this kind of very competitive job market, and maybe Pat, you could answer that, but also I'd like to hear from Stan too, on first from Pat, but then also from Stan in terms of an entry-level position right now. What makes a resume stand out? So first, if we could start with Pat and then go to Stan.
Well, all the paper looks alike. And I can tell you that people don't have time to really adequately go through resumes. And so that's where some real reconnaissance comes in. How do you become top of mind to someone who is hiring? How you do that is what Stan mentioned earlier. You network. You use some of your tools, like LinkedIn is a wonderful tool to find out how can you get your name, your face, and your qualifications to the top of the pile. That way you can get noticed. Everyone has a spiffed up resume. Everyone has a spit and polish on it at this time. So it's really making sure that you have the right assets, the right experience, very visible, and that you can get in front of somebody during this period of time. And that takes networking.
Right. So yeah, that's a very good point, that it's a resume alone by itself is probably not going to get you a job, especially against somebody who's got a connection. So making those connections are very
making important. The connections. It's the old post and pray, as we call it in the business.
And Stan, what do you think in terms of, especially when we're talking about entry-level positions and positions first out of college? Is it connections and relationships, or resume, or both? How does that change for an entry-level position?
Yeah, I think I really agree with Pat. The resume in conjunction with the networking can really pay big dividends. When you look at a resume, if that resume has some priority that a hiring manager understands that's coming from someone they know or someone in their own professional network, that can really make the difference. Resumes are one of the things we work with students and new grads and on the most. And so again, I would encourage you to kind of take the time to use a career coach who sees a lot of resumes and understands how to make resumes impactful, can help you write those accomplishment statements that really do draw out your unique set of skills. There's an interesting thing, I ask this question a lot in the workshops, what do you think the purpose of a resume is? And most of the time I get the answer, it's, well, to get a job. Well, actually the answer is to get an interview. So you've got to have the right information and convey those relevant skill sets on the resume, or you won't get to that hiring moment. Just, of course, you all know, as Pat mentioned, there's not a lot of time that HR managers are going to spend with the resume. So the top third of your resume is probably still the most important. I like to encourage people to think about adding a summary of qualifications or highlights up at the top to really kind of preview and help employers know what to expect as they get down into your resume. Bullet points and formatting is, formatting is important. Be concise with your bullet points. We teach people how to write accomplishment statements, which really draws out outcomes. If you don't feel like, and this is something for new graduates, you don't feel like, hey, I don't have a lot of work experience, or maybe my work experience is a little bit shallow, we can work to help develop some of the skills in what we would call a functional style. So we're really talking not so much about where you worked, like most resumes you see is a chronological work history. A functional resume maybe help you a little bit to identify those skills that an employer is looking for that are kind of crossover skills. So it's not so important where you worked, but kind of what skills you can bring. So resumes are still a really important part of the job search. And again, I think I'd encourage you to work with a professional coach who really knows resumes. Your work on a resume is never done. So you're updating it, you're continuing to add. One of the things right now you can be doing is lining up professional references while you're at home, and trying to start thinking about how to really leverage your resume.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dan. We've been getting some questions in on the chat. And this actually is a question for you, Stan, to follow up.
Okay.
But we had a specific question from someone who's on staff at the University of Utah, but they graduated more than a year ago, and they wondered if there were any resources for staff at the U.
We never really turn anyone away. We're of course willing to have an initial meeting and sit down. I think that there are some resources through our human resources office, and they do some coaching, but taking a look at a resume or giving some guidance around what their target aspiration is an easy thing for one of our coaches to do. If you're on staff at the University of Utah, I would suggest just do a walk-in visit with us. We've got coaches that are available on a walk-in basis that could do a quick look at a resume, or at least give you some guidance, and then maybe to point you to some of the community resources or the Alumni Association resources that really are designed and are really to bridge over. Our mission and our charge is to work with currently enrolled students and recent graduates, but we will never say no to somebody in our community that needs some support and some guidance.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. No, I'm sure staff appreciates that.
Absolutely.
I've got another question that's come in on the chat. Actually, I wanted to throw this to Sarah. Sarah, do you think right now, because things have changed so much, is it important to put on your resume that you are fluent in online formats, that you're good at, say, Zoom or Teams, FaceTime, Skype, WebEx? I mean, are those important skill sets to be listing, or is that kind of just taken for granted that people know how to use that?
So if everyone has that skill, it becomes less important to distinguish yourself. So right now, where everyone is using things like Zoom, I wouldn't list Zoom on a resume, because they're going to expect that you know how to use software, common softwares like Zoom. So if it's really common, I would say leave it off. If it's something that's specialized, or you have a unique training in, then sure, go ahead and list it. But for your run-of-the-mill sort of skills, everyone is expected to have those, so I don't think it adds much value to your resume.
Okay, that's good. Don't want to use up valuable real estate, right?
Exactly.
Okay. How about, I got a question for Melissa. And what do you think is the key to having a great online job interview?
Yeah.
Do you have any tips?
Yeah, the thing that first stood out to me is, well, first, you should treat it like you're in person still. I mean, I don't think you should change up your strategy all too much. Although with online, you have to take into consideration there's going to be technical aspects, just like our meeting today. There's always going to potentially be some technical difficulties. So making sure that you are rehearsed and that you have the software or the apps or whatever it is that you need to download to your device, your phone or your computer. I definitely would say that it would be ideal to be on a stationary computer in a quiet room with good lighting and where you can have your hands to navigate your resume or look through notes. If you're fumbling on a phone and trying to grab things, that is a big distraction and can cause your interview to suffer. But beyond the technical aspects, I would say you treat that like you would in person. Obviously, before the interview, you make sure the hiring manager, recruiters has a copy of an updated resume. So if you've made any changes, make sure it gets in their hands before that online interview. And then, again, just putting yourself in a situation where you're comfortable, where you can be focused, where you are not worried about background noise or kids or any distractions in the back. But again, being professional, being dressed appropriately, having, good hair and makeup or, hygiene is still important. Like I said, I think you should treat it like you would as if you were in person and do all the same steps in terms of follow-up and everything, even though you don't have the ability to be there in person. A lot of the tips you would get would still apply.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's helpful. I have a couple other questions that have been coming in. And this is actually, I think it's important to reiterate this, but I just want to make sure, we've got a couple people ask about this. If you're an alum and you are, more than a year out from graduation, the Alumni Association has a lot of resources on our website. So it's alumni.utah.edu. And we have go to the career help tab. And when you go to the career help tab, you'll see a list of resources, including our career coaches. If you go down to the career resources page, you'll find our career coaches who are here today, and you'll be able to connect with them directly. And I'll explain more about that at the end, but I just wanted we had a couple chats about that. So I wanted to make sure everybody knew that as an alum of the U, we do have career resources available to you on our website. And then as far as our coaches do, we have a coaching referral network. And Pat and Melissa and Sarah are all part of that network. And we have a couple other coaches coming online with that. And also a coach, Jonathan, who works for the Department of Workforce Services. And so he's also available, and you can find him on our website. But the way it works, just to let everybody know, our referral network, our coaches have all agreed to give a complimentary 15-minute introduction up front and to any U alum. And then after that, it's a fee of $150 for 2 sessions. It's actually a very affordable fee in the coaching world. So you would get those 2 sessions combined for $150. And that's kind of the structure for our referral network. But like I said, we have a lot of free resources too on our website at alumni.utah.edu. So as I saw the questions coming up in the chat, I just wanted to let everybody know that who's watching. Now, I've got some other questions here, and this one's an interesting one. I think I've heard a lot about this because, we've been hearing locally that the economy here in Utah compared to the rest of the country is actually doing fairly well, again, relatively speaking. But from an alum's point of view who have moved out of the state, say I'm an alum and I live I've moved to Detroit or somewhere, and I'm thinking, hey, maybe I should go back to Utah. The economy's doing fairly well there. So this is a question for Sarah, and then anybody else who wants to raise their hand and can answer. But Sarah, do you think despite this economic downturn, would you suggest to people coming back to Utah because of the economy? Would that be a good move at this moment?
So it is true that Utah's unemployment rate right now is not as high as other states. This is a question that doesn't really have a right or wrong answer, though. Unless you need to move for personal reasons or truly dire economic circumstances, I wouldn't necessarily move back to Utah right now if the only motivator is your job situation. Yes, your job is a large factor in where you live, but these economic conditions are temporary. We don't know how long it's going to last, but it is temporary. So I'd be hesitant to make a location decision based off of the economy alone. You never know what factors local to Utah might impact future job rates here in the state. A massive earthquake along the Wasatch Front, for example. So I would say that for now, if you're considering a move back to Utah, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. You want to be strategic about it. Your job is important, but it's not the only factor in where you live. So I would say there's not going to be a right or wrong answer to that question. But for most people, if we're looking for a cut and dry answer, I would say try and make sure that if you are going to move to Utah, that you're really thinking it through and that the economy isn't the only reason that you're moving back to Utah.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. No, I appreciate that. Now, what about, we've got some other questions. People are asking about reaching out on LinkedIn and that kind of thing. So I was wondering, Melissa, if you had any tips on using LinkedIn and some little tricks, and anybody can chime in here, but any tricks for LinkedIn that you would give to somebody, kind of a top 3 do's and don'ts on LinkedIn?
Mm-hmm. I think you want to build your LinkedIn profile to get to, there's different statuses, I believe, in what you can get your LinkedIn profile, and that's based on how complete your profile is, and having work history, having recommendations, having not necessarily certifications, but skills, and making sure that you're aligning your skills on LinkedIn so that recruiters that have paid for, say, like a recruiter light membership can access this information and really get you into their search to identify if you're going to be a good match for open positions with their companies. So there's like LinkedIn is super robust, so there's lots of things that you can do to really enhance your LinkedIn profile. But I would just say be very thoughtful, have things complete, have things up to date, don't have outdated information, and make it as current as possible.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I do know that, and we'll be talking about this next week on the 13th. There is a platform that the Alumni Association and the Career and Professional Development Center both help to run, and that is called Alumni Fire. It's uofu.alumnifire.com, and it's kind of a closed network version of LinkedIn. It's just for U of U alums, and it's a way to connect and reach out and ask for mentoring and career help and connections and that kind of thing. So I would urge everyone to have a very strong LinkedIn profile, particularly when you're coming right out of school. I think it's particularly important. And I also would urge all of our alums to join Alumni Fire, uofu.alumnifire.com. Get on that platform, connect with each other, and it's a great way to find job connections. There are jobs listed there, and there are profiles and ways to connect with other alums. So check that out. We'll be talking about that more next week on the 13th. I want to go back now to a question that we have. This is probably specifically for Stan. Stan, how would you suggest job seekers think about utilizing the resources and the services of the University of Utah? I mean, you've mentioned that before, but are there anything specifically I'd like to talk about, folks, can they reach out to their different colleges? Are there places on campus? I know the business school has a pretty robust alumni program. Do you have any details on that you could give our audience?
Well, I think, it goes back again to maintaining your network. And there are individuals that maybe you have had some interaction with as a student, even a fellow student sometimes can be the best link to an opportunity. But advisors or faculty members that you feel are in your network or would like to actually maybe invite them to come into your network based on some shared experience you've had, I think is a great way to add them into your network. The advisors on our campus are again their attention is directed at the students and the currently enrolled students, but there are many alumni groups that the colleges have formed, and you'll find some of those on LinkedIn. And I encourage you to jump in and follow those groups on LinkedIn that are related to your academic discipline where you graduated. You'll find that's a really effective way to network. So the colleges certainly, and I think sometimes framing what your degree has, the value it's added, can be, and helping understand what the skill sets that are unique to your major. And sometimes a chat with a faculty member or someone in a department can help you kind of get clarity around that. So the campus itself has a big community. We certainly feel like we want to support each other. Again, I mentioned our human resources. They provide lots of online trainings and in-person trainings, communication strategies. They do some certificates. The other thing, maybe the work that you might think about, is the continuing ed division, which is a great way to deepen your skill set, look at some of the courses that are academic outreach and continuing ed office is offering, especially now when you're maybe think, is there a skills gap that I might have? Do I need some project management skill sets? Do I want to look at some kind of certificate in possibly a social media platform? So there are ways that the campus can really strengthen you and support you. I would just go back, I guess the foundation is I think for the career and job search process would either be with our office, the Career Professional Development Office, or to reach to these professional coaches at the Alumni Association. That's a great starting point.
Okay, well, thanks, Dan. That was very good. I think you're right. We need to reiterate all the educational opportunities at the University of Utah, continuing ed, professional education. We have all kinds of resources that are available and allow our alums to further enrich their educational background, get certifications, get special qualifications that really help to make you more hireable. And finally, I think we have time. Let's see, do we have time for maybe one last quick question? This was a specific one. I'm going to throw this one at Pat real quick. This person says, my last position was not a good fit, and I'm afraid that will influence a future employer. Should I not mention that I worked there? That's a kind of specific question. But what do you think, Tom?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good one. I think it's a little hard. Melissa mentioned earlier that she had worked for one employer for 19 years. So that's a hard one to hide unless you have a good reason that you've not been working for the last 19 years. So some of it will depend very much on how long you've been someplace. But I would like to really emphasize, as far as your resume goes, this is your brochure. This is not a biography. You don't have to put everything on it. You get to really pick and choose and spin it, which is what's really interesting, how you want that information presented to someone in the future. And there's wonderful ways to be able to do that. It's interesting, a lot of people say, well, why do I need to go seek out the services of a career advisor or a career coach? And that's one of the things that they can do for you, is to be able to look at your information and really present it in a different way that perhaps spins the information frequently I've had people come to me and say, you know, oh, this has been a terrible experience. And I'll turn around and I'll say, well, let's look at what was really good about it. And let's talk about that aspect of it. You learned this, you did this, you moved on to this. We also help carve the story as to why you're leaving an employer. So, you know, why have you been separated? Why were you the one picked to be furloughed or laid off? And so all of those are great things that we are able to help you with, is how you make, and I think Sarah mentioned that, the story behind why you're making these various changes. So there's not a cut and dry yes or no answer, but I would say to that, again, your resume is your brochure, and you need to think about that, and you need to highlight the areas that make you unique and why you are so special that you should be at the top of the list, top of mind, and be the person who's getting the job offer.
Okay, oh, that's great. And Sarah, maybe if you could follow up on that, I'd like to hear your point of view on that too. And also, I have a question in terms of resumes. There are so many resumes floating around, and I know there are bigger companies that use and job placement services and different things. They're basically using bots to comb through resumes, and they're looking for keywords. How important is it to have different resumes with different keywords and have those out there and be in different places? Is that important to have, you know, multiple versions of your resume with different key phrases and keywords in them?
So keywords are important, no doubt. That's why we as career coaches will tell you that you need to tailor your resume to the specific job and company that you are applying for. In terms of having different versions of your resume out there, are you talking about like different versions, like a different version on LinkedIn versus like Indeed or Glassdoor?
Yes, you know, or specifically like if you're looking for, you're applying it at different places and they have different needs. Should you be adjusting your resume, you know, like you said, customizing it?
100%, yes. I would say for resources like LinkedIn and Glassdoor, anything that's publicly available, I would say make it consistent. But when you're applying to a specific company, absolutely tailor that. To the question, I completely agree with how Pat responded to your earlier question. But in terms of leaving something off of your resume, particularly if you're unemployed right now and you have nothing to lose and you're really concerned about it, if you don't like that job, leave it off a couple applications and see how it goes. But some of your best professional growth experiences, Pat talked a bit about this, but I just kind of want to underline it. Some of your best experiences will come from those jobs where you felt like you weren't being utilized, where you felt like the leadership wasn't making the right decisions. Your growth comes from those experiences where you are uncomfortable, and you want to be able to talk about that. So if you're really nervous about it and it's a real concern to you, leave it off, see what happens. But I would say that most of the time you can experiences and spin it, like Pat was talking about, to be to your benefit. It's your history. Don't run from it. Own it. Spin it to your benefit.
Okay. No, that's good advice. Stan, I think Stan has a follow-up to that too. And I know Stan has worked with a lot of students on their resumes. And so maybe Stan, if you have anything to add, I'd love to hear it.
Just a quick add. I think as important as your resume is, also your development of a solid personal introduction or an elevator speech is going to be really important for you, and that kind of helps you navigate some of the pitfalls in a resume if you can anticipate, you know, what your story is, and give yourself some opportunity to really develop a narrative that really works in your favor. And so that personal introduction is really important. Something you can really work on now. Polishing that is a great way to do it. Practicing that. Again, we have a platform in our center that allows you to go in and do that, an archive and see it and do it again and come up with some of the important things that you want to convey. So just a quick add, that's a real companion to the resume.
Great, thank you. Well, I think we need to wrap this up, but I want to thank all of our panelists I have a couple things I wanted to let the audience know. Remind again, have everyone go to alumni.utah.edu and go to Career Help tab. That's where you'll find our Career Coaches Referral Network. This is new for us. In the past, we've had a coach on staff that we used, and we found that we have, we have nearly 300,000 living alums across the planet and at the University of Utah. So we wanted to expand our portfolio of coaches so that we could be flexible and to help the most of our alumni and be able to meet them where they needed it. And so that's why we're really happy to have Sarah, Melissa, and Pat on board. And also we've got the 10 coaches that Stan's got for our new grads. Also, like I mentioned, we've got a couple more coaches coming on board onto the referral network. So I think it's really important to take advantage of those opportunities. Reach out to coaches like I said, Pat and Melissa and Sarah have all offered to do like 15-minute introductory session with you just to see if there's a good fit. I encourage you to do that. If you want to reach out to them, their contact information again is on our website, alumni.utah.edu. So please go there. And that's also where you'll find out how you can sign up for the events next week, both the virtual career fair and then our networking webinar. It's basically about COVID-19 and how to react to that in networking online. And that will be on the 13th. Again, all of that information is on our website. We encourage you to sign up to take advantage of these special online events. We thank everyone for coming and being a part of this today. This is our first attempt at this through our career services at the Alumni Association. So we appreciate your help. And again, thank you very much. And we would just want to thank our panelists and say, go Utah.